The allegation came in the form of a memo. No subject line. Just my name, the date, and the words, possible protocol breach under section 9.4 stamped across the top like a warning label. It was slid across my desk at 9:03 a.m. by Kelly Torres, our department administrator, who offered no eye contact, just a stiff nod and a quiet, "You've been asked not to attend today's team sync." I looked down at the paper, then up at the room, through the glass-walled conference where everyone else sat pretending not to notice me. Pretending like this wasn't already a verdict. I wasn't invited to ask questions. Just removed. And I already knew who'd written the memo. Danica Rowe. My supervisor. Head of policy and compliance. Known for quoting procedure like scripture and smiling like it hurt. She used to be sharp, tough, but fair. The kind of person you wanted in your corner during a storm. But in the last year, something had shifted. Meetings became colder. Praise turned into silence. Then came the rewrites. The approvals rerouted around me. The strange way she started CCNG herself on every internal message I sent. I sat there, holding the memo like it was some foreign object. Breach of protocol. It was laughable. I'd written half those protocols. But I didn't laugh. I didn't speak. I just stood, walked to my locker, and pulled out the notebook I kept behind the lining of my bag. The one I'd started months ago when I noticed the pattern. I added a new line to the list. March 3rd. Internal memo. Protocol breach accusation. No prior verbal warning. Then I slid the notebook back in place and left the office quietly, like I'd been trained to do. Like someone who understood that the loudest one in the room never wins when the deck is stacked. Outside, the city felt like a different planet. It always did when your job cracked beneath your feet. The same crosswalk. The same coffee stand. But you felt like a ghost moving through a routine that no longer belonged to you. I didn't call anyone. Not even my sister, who I usually vented to after work. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted clarity. So I went to the library. Not for books. For Signal. It was the one place in the city where the Wi-Fi didn't block whistleblower pages. I logged into the internal ethics portal. Anonymous submission. No IP tracking. I attached a copy of the memo. Then I wrote, "This is the 5th documented instance of targeted procedural manipulation by Danica Rowe. The memo is not based on an actual breach. The protocol in question was updated last quarter. I wrote the update myself. Please review attached documentation. I request a review by a neutral third party." I didn't include my name. But I didn't have to. Anyone in the compliance unit reading that note would know who wrote it. And that was the point. By 2:15 p.m., I received a system alert. Submission received. External inspector assigned. You will be contacted within 48 hours. By 5:42 p.m., Danica had locked my account credentials. That night, I showered with the door locked and the music off. I checked the hallway twice before going to bed. Because when people like Danica lose control, they don't escalate. They isolate. And I had just made myself very visible to people paid to look the other way. The inspector reached out 14 hours later. Her name was Rosalind Keating. External oversight, rotating auditor, specialized in internal sabotage reviews. She didn't ask if I was okay. She asked if I had time to talk. We met at a public cafe 3 blocks from HQ, neutral ground. No logos. No risk of being accidentally seen. Rosalind wore no badge, no corporate marker. Just a charcoal coat and sharp eyes that watched everything. "You say the memo was manufactured," she said calmly. I nodded. "You say the policy cited doesn't exist in current form." "I updated it in Q4, I told her. "Check the archive. Version 4.9. The clause she cited was deleted when the new vendor management framework launched. And who signed off on that update? Danica. That was the first time Rosalind's expression changed. A flicker of interest. I handed her a USB drive. "Everything's here. Notes. Meeting logs. Red lines. I've kept receipts since last summer." "Why?" "Because she's done this before. To other people. One resigned. One was demoted. One transferred out with no warning." Rosalind nodded once, then packed up. "I'll be in touch." No encouragement. No promises. Just process. I went back to work the next morning, even though I technically wasn't suspended. My badge still worked. My desk still existed. But people acted like I'd returned from a funeral. Smiles died halfway to their lips. Conversations paused when I approached. Danica didn't speak to me. Not in words. But her email to the team, sent at 9:14 a.m., said everything. As we navigate a challenging internal transition, I want to remind everyone of our responsibility to uphold professionalism and unity. Discretion is not only appreciated, it is expected. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. By noon, Kelly had taken over 2 of my ongoing projects for continuity. By 3 p.m., my seat was moved to a back corner. By 4:30 p.m., the IT team sent a message stating that I was to be copied on all process-related decisions, but no longer in active approver roles. I documented every single change. By hand. In ink. Because system logs can be erased. But paper? Paper survives. 3 days after our cafe meeting, Rosalind returned, this time without a warning. She showed up at headquarters, clipboard in hand, a quiet presence slipping through the building like she already knew where the rot was buried. She didn't ask for Danica first. She asked for access logs, version histories, change approvals. I didn't hear from her directly, but I saw her. At 10:42 a.m., she passed my desk without pause. At 12:08 p.m., I watched from the stairwell as she exited Danica's office with a hard drive under one arm and a red folder tucked tight to her chest. By 2 p.m., the temperature in the department had shifted. You could feel it, tight shoulders, glances exchanged mid-keystroke, conversations migrated to private chats. Something was happening, but no one said my name. That night, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered without thinking. Mississippi Lane? Rosalind's voice was crisp. Do you have a moment? Always. I reviewed the USB, she said. It was detailed. I stayed silent. I'd like to ask you something a little off record, she continued. Why did you stay? After the first incident. After you knew she was targeting you. That question hung there. I could have said I needed the paycheck. That I had rent, a family. I could have blamed hope or fear or inertia. But none of that was the truth. I wanted to understand why people let it happen, I said finally. I wanted to see how far she'd go. Rosalind didn't respond right away. Then she said, I need one more thing. What? The notebook. I froze. It's not in the file you gave me, she said. But it's clear you've been tracking her actions far longer than the submission date. The original logs matter. I hesitated. Do you trust me? She asked. No, I said plainly. But I trust systems. And this is the first one that's moved in the right direction. Then meet me tomorrow. Same cafe. Bring the notebook. I ended the call without confirming. But I knew I'd go. The next morning, before I left, I flipped through the pages one last time. Each line like a breadcrumb marking where her shadow had touched my work. July 14th. Original document overwritten without traceable change log. September 2nd. Stakeholder approval rerouted. No explanation. October 19th. Second team member reassigned without performance notice. It read like a slow war. But what struck me most wasn't the damage. It was how invisible it looked in isolation. A demotion here. A late-stage override there. Nothing explosive. Just a series of quiet amputations, each disguised as realignment. I slid the notebook into my coat pocket and left the building like someone going to confession. At the cafe, Rosalind took it without a word and placed it into a sealed evidence bag. I'll scan it myself, she said. Does it help? It helps establish intent, she replied. But more than that, it shows awareness. She knew what she was doing. The logs don't just show her decisions. They show her consistency. I nodded, but something gnawed at me. If you know she's done this before, I asked, why hasn't anyone stopped her? Rosalind gave me a long look. Then she spoke, not like an investigator, but like someone who'd asked that question before. Because in most companies, compliance officers are the last people anyone wants to accuse of noncompliance. She made herself a firewall. And now? And now she's under audit. Her own weapon turned on her. I didn't go back to the office that afternoon. I walked the long way home. Through city blocks I hadn't touched since orientation day. through the lobby where Danica once introduced me to the leadership team as the next backbone of policy, through the old side alley where she used to sneak cigarette breaks and talk about how exhausting it was to keep everyone else in line. By the time I reached my apartment, the knot in my chest had shifted. Not gone, just tighter. Focused. At 8:12 p.m., I got a message from Kelly. No greeting. No emoji. Just a file. Policy_attestations_Q4_final.docs. I opened it. It was a template. And my name was already typed at the bottom, waiting for my signature. The form stated I had reviewed and acknowledged all team-led policy changes in the last fiscal quarter, including the one Danica claimed I violated. I stared at the blinking cursor next to my name. No message. No explanation. Just a quiet command. Sign it. Pretend. Comply. Instead, I forwarded it to Roslyn with no subject line. She replied 7 minutes later. Print this. Sign it. And bring it tomorrow. I want to see exactly where they expected you to fall. The next day, I walked into headquarters like nothing had happened. Nobody stopped me. Danica's door was closed. Her assistant avoided eye contact. At 9:47 a.m., Roslyn entered the building flanked by 2 others. Legal. And someone from executive governance. That was the moment I knew things had shifted. Danica emerged 10 minutes later, pale but composed. She didn't look at me. Just gathered her things and followed them. No announcement. No confrontation. Just a silent evacuation of power. Roslyn didn't contact me that day. But Kelly did. She stopped by my desk around 4 p.m., cleared her throat like it hurt, and set down a small envelope. From governance, she said. They said it's acknowledgement. I opened it. Inside was a note and signed. Your signature isn't needed. Your silence wasn't wasted. I stared at it for a long time. Because for the first time in months, someone had finally said the quiet part out loud. Danica didn't return. There was no farewell email. No leadership announcement. Just a cleaned-out office by Monday morning and a memo stating that interim structural support would be provided by compliance governance. Most people moved on fast. The department adjusted like it had dropped a weight it didn't realize it was carrying. Projects resumed. Meetings resumed. Smiles became genuine again. But not for me. Because when the monster disappears, people don't cheer for the survivor. They worry about who's next. I wasn't thanked. I wasn't promoted. I wasn't even acknowledged. In fact, I was reassigned. Restructuring, they called it. I was given a new manager, a polite man named Howard with little interest in conflict and even less interest in history. I was assigned to a new division, risk workflow documentation, which sounded important but mostly meant updating policy PDFs for formatting compliance. The work was clean. Safe. Isolated. I was no longer dangerous. I was invisible again. But I kept watching. One afternoon, Howard passed me a binder with an apologetic look. They're asking for legacy version audits, he said. From back when Danica was running point. Just check for date mismatches and broken references. Standard stuff. I opened the binder later that evening, half out of habit, half out of curiosity. What I found wasn't broken formatting. It was buried evidence. Specifically, a backdated policy draft with 2 approval signatures, one of which belonged to a staff member who hadn't worked here in nearly a year. The other was Danica's. I checked the system. No record of the version existed in the archive. It had been deleted or hidden manually. This wasn't a formatting issue. This was a ghost document designed to fabricate compliance where there was none. I made a copy, scanned it to a drive. Then I checked the metadata. Last accessed, 3 weeks ago. By Kelly. The same Kelly who'd slid Danica's memo across my desk without blinking. The same one who'd quietly forwarded the forged policy acknowledgement form with my name pre-filled. For months, I thought she was just a passive observer. Now I wasn't so sure. The next morning, I walked straight into Roslyn's temporary office. I need 5 minutes, I said. She waved me in. I handed her the binder. She flipped through the pages, reading without speaking. This isn't an old mistake, I said. Someone tried to cover a gap left by Danica's removal. Recently. Someone's still here. Rosalind closed the binder and tapped a pen against her notes. We suspected someone had assisted with document control. You just confirmed it. Do you think it was Kelly? Rosalind didn't answer. Instead, she asked, "How's your reassignment been?" "Clean," I said. "Too clean." "Maybe." She studied me for a long moment. "Would you be willing to play a little dirtier?" she asked. I blinked. Define dirty. Not illegal. Not dishonest. Just strategic. She explained the plan. Kelly would be informed of a routine data reconciliation project tied to archived document workflows, one I'd now own. I'd be given elevated access under the guise of historical cross-referencing. But in truth, I'd be searching. Looking for manipulation patterns. Unlogged edits. Ghost deletions. A digital paper trail. Won't she be suspicious? I asked. Not if she thinks you've been defanged, Rosalind said. Which everyone does. It wasn't personal. It was structural. The way organizations respond to whistleblowers is rarely with gratitude. It's with distance. I had already been neutralized in their eyes. They just didn't realize I was still paying attention. I agreed. 2 days later, my credentials were expanded under the heading Legacy Policy Traceback Initiative. I started small. Approval logs. Document author histories. Signature timing gaps. Most things were innocuous. Until I reached the vendor review documents from the prior spring. There it was again. A signature from a different ex-employee, one who had resigned following an unrelated internal dispute. The approval timestamp was logged in a block where only Kelly had backend access. I checked the email thread attached to the approval request. The message from Kelly read, "All set, compliance approved." Except no such approval had been recorded. No compliance officer had signed off. Kelly had been forging back-end approvals using deactivated staff identities. And Danica had been the shield. But now Danica was gone. Which meant Kelly was vulnerable. I gathered everything, metadata screenshots, audit trails, revision diffs. It took hours. At 11:17 p.m., I sent the file to Rosalind using the secure channel she'd given me months ago. No subject line. Just the attachment labeled, "Structural Corruption, Secondary Operator." She didn't reply until morning. Reviewed. This is enough. I didn't ask what that meant. Because part of me already knew. On Thursday, the security card scanner at the front desk was disabled for 17 minutes. During that window, Kelly was escorted out by HR and one of Rosalind's team members. No one said why. But the air changed again. Suddenly, people remembered how to make eye contact with me. Howard offered me a real project, an actual policy development draft, not formatting grunt work. 2 other team leads stopped by my desk to get input on long-delayed procedural gaps. It was subtle, but it was change. I didn't celebrate, because it wasn't over. People like Kelly don't act alone. They survive in ecosystems. And ecosystems don't vanish just because you remove 2 predators. They adapt. I kept the drive with my notes. The original notebook. The copies. And I started a new document. Phase 2. Passive compliance by leadership tier. Because if Danica was the knife and Kelly the hand, then someone else was the eye that chose not to see. And I was going to find them. The promotion offer arrived the following week. Buried in a polite email from Talent Strategy, framed as a role alignment opportunity with improved scope and compensation. No fanfare. No mention of what I'd uncovered. Just corporate language polished to a neutral sheen. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't want it. Because I wanted to know why they were offering it now. Rosalind had gone quiet. Her audit had technically concluded. Danica and Kelly were both gone, and the company had wrapped the findings in a tidy bow labeled process review. But I knew better. So I replied with a single sentence. I'd like to speak with governance before accepting. The next morning, I was invited to a private call with a senior compliance liaison, a man named Decker. Sharp suit, practiced friendliness, the kind of smile that said, "We want you calm, not curious." He opened with compliments. "Your diligence has been noticed. You've helped us stabilize a difficult period." I didn't reply. He shifted tone. "We understand your transition was not ideal. and that leadership failed to support you appropriately. This new role is a step toward correcting that. Still, I said nothing. He folded his hands. We'd like to move forward with a clean page. There it was. Clean page. No mention of Danica. No mention of Kelly. No inquiry about how I'd known to look, or why I'd kept notes, or how deep the manipulation had run. Just forward. Just silence. I leaned forward slightly. Did you read the metadata report I submitted last week? He blinked. I'm not directly briefed on all findings. I smiled. Then you should know, Danica and Kelly weren't working alone. At least 3 document sequences show system-level override access that only governance would have. His lips parted, then closed. That access trail includes policy reversal logs on vendor compliance, ones signed off during blackout periods. I only found them because Kelly used inconsistent timestamping. Sloppy. Decker straightened in his chair. You're making serious implications. I'm stating evidence. And what is it you want? He asked, tone sharpening. Money? Title? Influence. I met his gaze. I want truth to mean something in this company. A pause. Then he said, you have 2 options. Accept the role, and we proceed quietly. Or you try to isolate me again, I interrupted. Strip me of access. Diminish me behind the scenes. But here's the problem. I leaned closer. You're too late. I reached into my bag and removed a small envelope. Inside was a sealed summary of everything I'd collected since Danica's removal. Not just her misconduct. The cover-ups. The forged sign-offs. The executives who knew and chose to wait it out. I slid it across the desk. This is a copy, I said. The original went to the Office of Professional Conduct under our parent company, with a backup routed to an external legal reviewer. Decker paled. You filed outside the company? Of course I did, I said. You think I'd trust internal governance after all this? He opened the envelope. Read the first few lines. His eyes flicked back to mine. You're burning the bridge, he said. No, I said quietly. I'm making sure no one else has to crawl over it. That night, I walked past the office building without going inside. My keycard still worked. My title still stood. But something had shifted inside me. Not anger. Not pride. Just clarity. For months, I had played by their rules. Documented quietly. Endured the cold shoulders, the manufactured failures, the slow erasure of my credibility. All for what? To be offered a promotion as hush money? To be absorbed into the system I had exposed? No. I didn't want their chair at the table. I wanted the table rebuilt. 2 days later, an internal announcement was sent out. Governance was undergoing restructuring. New ethics protocols were being instituted. External audits would now be routine, not reactionary. No names were mentioned. No origins explained. But I saw my fingerprints on every line. That same afternoon, Rosalind called. Back from the dead? I asked. Never left, she said. Just moved higher up the chain. They wanted me quiet too. And? I'm not good at quiet, she said. Then she paused. You scared them. Good. You did it clean, she said. Most people don't. I laughed softly. No such thing as clean. Just quiet enough to be undeniable. Before we hung up, she added one last thing. By the way, Decker's stepping down. Family reasons. Thought you'd want to know. I didn't respond. I just smiled. My last act before leaving the company wasn't an email or a formal resignation. It was training my replacement. A woman named Jessa, smart and sharp, who asked too many questions and didn't laugh at politics. The kind they'd try to mold or mute. The kind they didn't see coming. I gave her everything. Access logs, policy templates, even a version of my old notebook with new pages marked in blue ink. She held it like it was a map. And maybe it was. The last thing I told her before I left was this. They will test your silence before they ever test your skill. Pass the first, and they'll never know how dangerous you are. She didn't flinch. She just nodded. I walked out of that building with nothing in my hands and everything in order. They tried to ruin me with protocol. So I rewrote what protocol meant. And when I handed it back, it no longer belonged to them.